Welcome, everyone. I'm Gigi Rosenberg, and I'm a public speaking coach, and I am so excited to be here today with my guest, Susi Schaefer. I got introduced to Susi Schaefer when I was scanning the new books coming out from Sounds True Publishing, and I happened to notice one gorgeously illustrated book for children about performance anxiety. I took a closer look, and I realized this was a book really for all ages. Now, Susi, let me introduce her now, was born and raised in the Austrian Alps, and she trained as a glass painter, which makes a lot of sense when you see her incredibly luminous illustrations. Then she moved to Southern California for sun, I'm sure a little fun and adventure. She then studied graphic design and has illustrated the books Zuzen, which is a wonderful book about, well, it's not really about yoga, but it's for children about the benefits of doing yoga, if you can believe that. And it's a wonderful book for adults as well. I know that because I'm a yogi. And also the book, Good Morning, I Love You, Violet. She's also the author and illustrator of Cat Ladies, The Glow Show, and the book we're going to talk about today, All Eyes on You. So welcome to the show, Susi. I am so thrilled to have you here.
Well, thank you. I couldn't be more happy to be here.
Oh, great. Well, I'm going to start with my first question, which is the opening of the book, All Eyes on You, starts with a question. And the question is, have you ever been in the spotlight? So I wanted to ask you, what was your thinking with starting the book with that question?
I basically wanted to throw the reader right into that kind of panic and fear inducing moment from the first sentence.
That's great. And it totally does that. Yeah, absolutely. And then tell us what ends up, as much as you want to share, what ends up happening in the book after that first question of, have you ever been in the spotlight?
It basically sets up different scenarios of children in different situations that they might find themselves in, where they're in front of an audience or have eyes on them. And it talks about how they may not always be aware of what that's like. And once they progress and they are on stage or on the sports field, how the physical takes over, the ringing in the ears and that sweaty palms and that panic, and how to maybe apply some tips and tricks to help them overcome and snap them out of that moment.
Yeah, absolutely. The physical does take over. And what's so interesting is I recently interviewed another Sounds True author named Deb Dana about polyvagal theory. And it's such a great description of what happens to our nervous system when our body does take over, just exactly what you described, the sweaty palms, the ringing in the ears, etc. So now I have to ask you, how did you come up with the idea for this book? Like, what was the need that you saw, or how was it born? How was this book born?
As an author, I always try to capture ideas that come into my life, and that some will take fruition, some will not. But I have a little list where I write everything down that comes to mind. But this is something that actually hits close to home. I'm a little nervous now speaking to just you because the camera eye is on me. And it's something that I struggle with still to this day. But I just figured, you write what you know. That's the rule number one in writing. And I thought if there's some tips and tricks very simply for kids that could help them overcome that moment with a good dose of humor, I like my funny stuff, then I just give it a try. And this book was not hard for me to write at all. It wrote itself very easily.
Wow. So I guess what you're saying is this writing the book came from your personal experience of having some performance anxiety.
Very much.
Because one of the tips I give adults when I'm teaching them is I ask them if they're a good host. Like if someone's at your house, are you a good host? And most of the time they say, "Oh yeah, I'm a good host." So I say to them, "Well, when you're a host, I'll bet that your focus is really out there on your audience. Like Do they need more food? Do they need a drink of water? Do they look cold, etc.?
Mm-hmm.
And so the headlights, rather than pointing at the speaker, are pointing at the audience.
Right.
So I say, you can't exactly show up at every meeting saying, "Hey, I'm the host of this meeting," because you might not be. But if
Mm-hmm.
you act like you're the host, it can make your focus outward rather than
Mm-hmm.
inward. So anyway, that's just what I thought of when with that beautiful title, "All Eyes on You."
I couldn't agree more.
Now the thing is, when I think about my childhood, I loved making puppet shows. I would get together with my friends and we would make radio shows. But I mean, really, all that was we'd record something and then listen to it back. It was like our own
Mm-hmm.
private radio show. I sang in choruses, I acted in plays. And it's funny, as a kid, I found being on the stage really thrilling. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any anxiety about it at all. And it wasn't like I was even thinking that I was being stared at or looked at.
Mm-hmm.
But I just found the lights, the stage, doing something performative was just so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that really changed for me when I got to high school. Then the all eyes on me felt much more present. But I'm just wondering, in you thinking about this book, do you think performance anxiety is more of a thing today than it was years ago? Like, do you think it's more of an issue right now? Or do you think that some kids just have a certain amount of performance anxiety?
I think there's several answers to that. In a way, we live in a time right now where every moment, either we record every moment and broadcast it, or it's all around us. Everybody's a celebrity with the influences and everything. In a way, I think it's less intimidating to be in front of an audience because it's just part of our daily lives. But I think that kids are just wired a certain way. And I don't necessarily think the people that I speak to in this book seek out the spotlight. It's a side effect. So if you think about somebody who wants to do a sport for the sportsmanship, the camaraderie, the team spirit, they still might have to go up to bat onto the plate, and then all eyes are on them. And that might be that one moment out of the whole experience that is the least favorite. Or if somebody loves self-expression and loves acting and doesn't mind the lights, but then part of that is being in front of an audience, that might be the one thing they don't seek out. And the book is really for those where it becomes an unforeseen side effect. Now, the kids who naturally love performing, they might still get nervous if they have to do a classroom presentation because they might feel scrutinized in a different way, not maybe knowing their stuff or just being self-conscious, or might feel somebody might judge them. But the main point of the book is helping the kids who don't like that one aspect of the eyes on them to overcome them, to be still able to enjoy the greater experience of what they're seeking.
Right. So it could be a kid who loves to sing and at rehearsals they're fine, but
Yes.
then they get to the show and they're like, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize there were going to be all these people looking at us." Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's how a lot of them find out for the first time. They might rehearse and do this and that, but once they're on stage, they're like, "Oh, what's happening?"
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. It is a horrible feeling. Uh-oh, what's happening, especially when you're not used to it.
Mhm.
I would love to hear the story that you want to add about this experience.
Sure. So when my children were in elementary school, they always had a holiday show, as all the schools do, and it's for the parents kind of the highlight. And most kids are super excited, and so I watched my kids up on stage singing their hearts out, and I scanned across, and then there was a girl there with her hands covering her face and her head in her lap, and my heart broke. And I saw the mom run up from the side and talk to her, and I thought she probably didn't expect what it would feel like to have people look at her. She got it. I'm sure she practiced. I'm sure she knew all the words and everything. But just that one moment, that unexpected moment, that was definitely, I had her in mind also when I wrote this book.
Wow. Wow. That's such a great story. So you wrote the book for that one kid, and I'm sure there's many kids like that one kid. That's great. That's really great. So I would love to know, and I guess you've sort of answered my question already, but I would love to know, is there an ideal reader for the book? So, for example, if I'm a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle and I'm shopping for a book,
Mhm.
how will I know this is the right book for that age 4 to 8 year old, which is, I think, the age range for the book? So let me know as an adult how will I know this is the right book?
I would say situations where they have to be in front of people, whether it's in sports or dance or theater or classroom presentations. It would really apply to any child that feels a little hesitant about speaking in front of a group in any capacity.
That's great. That's perfect. Well, you know what I want to do now? What I would love to do now is look at some individual or talk about some individual pages in the book. So there's a moment when the character suddenly notices, oh, all eyes are on me. And there's this beautiful description of performance anxiety, which is a feeling of my legs might feel frozen, my hands might feel clammy, my heart might race, etc. So, what's so powerful about this lesson that you're really teaching on that page is this is what the nervous system does, and if you can notice it and then name it, I think you can get a little bit of separation from it so it doesn't quite feel so overwhelming. So I'm just wondering, when you were going through all the experiences or the bodily feelings, how did you decide which ones to pick on that page?
I first reminded myself of the age group. That's very important because you can't see uh, big scientific descriptors, but I try to explain what it physically feels like. And what I feel like myself is just that. You know, sometimes the ears kind of ring, and sometimes you freeze. I don't know how, it's an evolutionary trait. And it doesn't really matter to the kids how, they just care that it happens. And I'm the same way. I just don't need to know all the ins and outs. Yes, sometimes you can avoid those, but not in that situation. I just wanted to help them get out of that situation. And the reason why I chose those descriptors is simple. They were simple
They were
to the
simple,
point.
and also I can remember feeling frozen as a kid.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And from my polyvagal study, I know Deb Dana would say, oh, you're in dorsal, but the kids don't need to know what it's called. They just need to know, oh, I feel frozen. So I thought that was really beautiful.
I heard this term lately, evolutionary mismatch,
Oh,
in,
interesting.
and I think it had to do with something I watched about sleep habits. But I feel it also applies to being watched, because not that long ago, being watched means you could be prey, and it was an unnatural. You wanted to blend into the background, and so. But I think it's too high concept, for small children. So I just wanted to find the essence of the feeling, put a name to it, and then see how you could overcome it.
Well, that's so interesting because being watched can be seen as negative, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm about to be attacked. But
Mm-hmm.
being watched for some people, like me as a kid, just
Mm-hmm.
made it more thrilling. So it probably just depends on what your experience is of being watched. So interesting.
I agree.
So on another one of the pages that I really enjoyed, you talked about if you feel, I think you said in the book, if you feel overwhelmed, focus on being present. And then you gave some very specific tools and techniques that kids could do. So when you think about this concept of being present, what I was just wondering is, I don't know if as a 4 to 8 year old, I would have had that knowledge of what being present is. So I was just wondering if there was anything that went into your thinking about using that word present.
I think it's a well known word in anxiety management as a whole. whether it's meditation or snapping yourself out with the famous rubber band on your wrist. And I did use it because I figure it could open a conversation with parents as well. Most people know what it means to kind of focus on the moment, take the focus off yourself. And if you're in the present, then you can use that moment to snap yourself out of where you're at and take the focus off you on the bigger picture, on the bigger reason why you're there, and hopefully enjoy the moment as well.
Yeah, because the tips you give after that talk about breathing, which can be such a powerful way to calm down and come back again. The other one you talk about is if your heart races, to do some counting. And I have to say, that's one thing I had never heard of before. So tell me about the tip for counting. Can you give us a little lesson right now in what, if your heart races, count? But could you just teach us what we should do if we feel our heart racing with the counting?
Of course, I'd be happy to. And once again, I would keep it very simple. But at that age group, most kids can count to 10. And I would just encourage them to, if they have a moment, just count slowly to 10. And then if they're able to backwards or repeatedly count to 10, just a couple of times, because anything that takes your focus and your full mind of that fearful moment is a good thing with the counting. Or also, just to go back to the breathing real quick, another side effect of shallow breathing is hyperventilating, which will also physically affect you. And so I chose specific things that can calm down the nervous system.
That's great. Because the counting, that's absolutely true. If you focus on something else, and I'll often have people do that, I just didn't do it with counting, that can be great. And also it gives you something to do, so you kind of take a pause and you're giving yourself a break. So a really terrific tip. So one of my favorite pages, really, that almost made me teary when I saw it, and I'm sure you know which one I'm talking about, is the one where you say, if you need extra support, find that extra special pair of eyes on you in the audience. And I think most people I know when they were little would have loved to have like their mother in the audience. So I immediately thought of what, loving person would you want sitting in that audience? But what it also reminded me of is often I'll tell people, adults, when they're presenting, find the friendly faces in the audience and just look at them.
Yeah.
You don't want to be looking at the people that look grumpy or bored. Absolutely. And sometimes people's listening faces look a little bored, but they're not. They're just listening. So you want to find the people that are, nodding and smiling and all that. So I was just wondering if you had any other thoughts in mind on that beautiful page about finding that special pair of eyes.
You could make a pact beforehand with your child that you say, hey, I'm sitting here with your favorite stuffed animal. We're both watching you, and just focus on us. Or your favorite uncle will come, or you choose a friend or a favorite teacher or anyone that you can just focus on and go back to, and maybe make a pact that they're kind of in the line of sight, natural line of sight.
That's great. That's great. I do feel there are certain people in our lives who bring out the best in us.
Yes.
So sometimes I'll even say you could imagine those people in the audience. You know what I mean? For a kid, it's just easier if they know who to look at. But that's such a great tip, to put those people in the audience and then give the presentation to them. That really is such a great way to access your best self.
And if nobody's there, then do it. You're the eyes that watch you. You do it. You dance for yourself.
So one other delightful page was the one where the advice is to picture the audience in their underwear.
Yes.
Because often, you've heard for adults, they should picture, imagine the audience naked. So tell me, have you ever tried that? And has it worked for you? Or have you given that advice to any children? And tell me how that works for you.
I have definitely done that, but in a comical way, because I like humor. So when I say underwear, I mean rubber duckies, ruffles, polka dots, and all, Or you could also invite them as, envision them as zoo animals or whatever. Just anything that makes them less scary, the eyes that are looking at you. And so I thought that would be maybe some comic relief for some kids, if they do that.
So it's sort of like making light of in a good way, or making, the people in the audience just look very, very human.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that is really, really great. It takes the pressure off. It's like we're
Yeah.
all humans. We're all, we all have foibles, etc. So that's really, really terrific. Well, I also loved your book, the one about doing yoga with kids, or it's not really with kids, it's a children's book about doing yoga. And, since I do yoga, just all the beautiful illustrations in there were just really terrific. And so, you know what? I actually think All Eyes on You is a great book for adults,
Mm-hmm.
and the yoga book for kids is a great book for adults as well. It just brings back the fun and realizing, it just takes the pressure off. We're
Well,
all
thank
just
you
trying to
so
get
much.
up there, do the best we can.
A huge shout out to Kristen Fisher, the author of Susan. She did a fantastic job, and it was a pleasure to illustrate and have her words help the words come to life. Yeah, that was a fun one to work with as well.
But it's funny, reading that one also reminded me of how many animals, are, we're doing downward dog now. We're
Yeah.
doing, whatever eagle, et cetera, et cetera. So that was really great.
Mhm.
Well, tell us how we can find out more about you and how we can pre-order the book.
So my website should have all that information on it, and it's my name, susischaefer.com, SUSISCHAE, 1FER.com. And also the book should be available to pre-order wherever books are sold with bookshop.org or other big booksellers.
That sounds great. And I just want to thank you for writing such a beautiful book. As a public speaking coach, public speaking is so important in almost every job, every career, really in life in general. And
Mhm.
it's such a great idea there's just no way you can do it without getting a little bit nervous. I mean, the nerves sort of come with it. And it's so wonderful to start children on that path of dealing with that performance anxiety when they're young, so they can expect the feelings to come and then know their tips and tools and techniques to help them work on it. I feel like I want to get the book for all of my clients.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm so grateful that I got a chance to talk about it on your
Yeah,
podcast.
me too. Thank you for listening to Gigi Presents. This has been Gigi Rosenberg in conversation with Susi Schaefer. I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.